Hi, welcome to Stoughton Spotlight. I'm your host, Jeffrey Pickette. We have a special edition of our show, Conversations with the Candidates, where we'll be interviewing the 4 candidates running for school committee and the 2 candidates running for selectman. On this episode, I have Joe McDonough, who is running for the school committee. Nice to see you, Joe.
You as well, Jeff.
And Joe is a firefighter, a lieutenant with the Brockton Fire Department, and he's lived in Stoughton for the last couple of years and is ready to jump into the political scene.
Yes.
A lot of the other candidates are in the school committee side of things are, they've either run before, they're incumbents, or had served in a previously. You're new to the picture, so just kind of introduce yourself to the residents of Stoughton.
Well, I've been in Stoughton for a couple of years now. Married my wife, who was born and raised in Stoughton. We have 2 children, 4 and 7, who will both be in Stoughton public schools come this fall. I have a bachelor's from UMass Lowell in criminal justice. I served in the Coast Guard Reserve for 6 years. I have my master's from Framingham State in public administration, and I'm currently working as a firefighter, as a lieutenant on a local fire department. That's about it.
So what's that like working with a fire department? You're in a larger city, just in terms of the responses and kind of that's a job that really requires a certain level of being calm and collected in the most intensive situations.
It can have its moments. Some days are busier than others, but the best part about the job is you never know what you're going to. So the job's different every day. You can show up for anything from a person in distress to a natural disaster. So, I mean, it's an exciting job, a fun job, and it makes you feel like you're actually making a difference.
Now, what made you want to run for the school committee and like I said, jump into the political scene?
Like I said, I have 2 children. One of the factors that my wife and I looked at when we were moving to Stoughton was the schools, obviously. That's what you look at when you have younger children, and I was excited about the all-day kindergarten and the fact that there is going to be a new high school, potential new high school. So the schools were the reason we moved to Stoughton. I wanted to run for the school committee to make sure that all the children in this town receive the education that they need to be successful in life. I feel like the school committee has been moving the right way, or the schools in general have been moving in the right direction recently, and I want to make sure that continues that way.
And so you mentioned the high school building project, and that's obviously going to be a big issue or topic this campaign season with the project just progressing at the pace that it has. By this spring, there very well could be a vote, expected to be a vote at town meeting to approve it, and then one to approve a debt exclusion for the whole population, to go to the polls. Where do you stand on this? Just kind of your thoughts on the project overall.
I'm very much in favor of it. I think it'll be a great improvement to the town. Like I said, that's one of the reasons why I moved to the town. It is a town, pretty much, in my opinion, is founded around the education and public safety. Schools will bring other people into the town. A new school isn't going to teach kids, but it gives them the facilities to receive a better education with all the technology they need nowadays. So I think it'll be a great improvement to this town. I think it will help the property values of this town, help offset in the future when you sell your house the cost that it's going to cost you in taxes to pay for the school. So.
And obviously, as you mentioned, it comes with a big price tag.
Yes.
And so that's something that the residents will have to feel comfortable with. What's the if somebody came up to you with a concern, you could be on the school committee. If this candidacy is successful, you'll be on the school committee at the time when the votes are being taken to approve a debt exclusion. If somebody came up to you with a concern about this just costs so much, what would your answer be?
I would be receptive to them. It's no one wants to pay more taxes. It's just a fact of life. Taxes, nobody likes them. Nobody wants to pay them. They're a necessary evil. And there's a limit to what people are willing to pay. I would say to them that the benefit outweighs the cost in this particular situation. I know there's other capital projects that people are talking about, and those are another topic. But in this particular situation, I believe the property values are going to go up. I think they're saying what, about $300 on average for the average homeowner over 20 years is $6,000. I don't think $6,000 is a lot to pay for my child's education or any child's education. That's less or equal to 1 year of paying for a private school. So I would just kind of point out the positives to a person to help them see what they're going to get in return for the investment that they're making in the town of Stoughton.
And this project, as you mentioned, it's not the only building project that the town is discussing right now. One of the others is a public safety building. Now, while that's not school committee related directly, one of the places that they're potentially looking to put such a building is on property that is technically controlled by the school department, and that's in the line and lumber property, which is up around off of Park Street behind the South School.
Yes.
There's a town meeting article that will ask town meeting members to consider transferring the stewardship, so to speak, of the property from the schools to the school committee to the selectmen. Where would you stand on something like that?
I feel that it's prudent for the town to, let me start by saying, I'm under the impression there's another chunk of land behind South School that can be used for the school.
Right, because that is something they're looking
That's separate from line and...
Right,
yeah.
to build a new South School.
Correct.
Potentially.
I think the first thing the town needs to do is find out if that is usable land. If it is not usable land to build the school, it doesn't make sense to give away this other piece of land if you have no way to put a potential South School. They're in the process of, from my understanding, applying for another statement of interest to get into the process of getting the state to approve South School, either renovation or rebuilding. If you give away the piece of land on Park Street, you find out the land behind the South School is not usable to build a school, you just box yourself into a corner. So I think the first step that the town needs to do is find out whether the land's buildable through a feasibility study or engineering, however they feel comfortable doing it. If that property is buildable, then I would say it's acceptable to give away the other land without any issue. But if they find out it's not, then it's not going to make sense to give away that land. If you need to build a new South School, it's no longer a neighborhood school, and you're going to pay busing to ship those kids to the school, which is going to actually cost more in the long run. A public safety building, I know they did the feasibility study and they came up with the line and lumber property site is the best, but that can, not saying we have a specific spot right now, but that can be placed anywhere in the town, and it doesn't need to be in a specific neighborhood. So I would be hesitant to give away that piece of land until we know the other piece of land is usable for a South School.
Sure. And again, you kind of have an interesting, a unique background where in running for school committee, but also have that public safety background. Yeah. And so mentioned, potential for a new South School. The high school obviously has gotten the bulk of the attention, but there are 5 elementary schools in Stoughton. The newest one is approaching 50 years old. The middle school is, about that old. All the school buildings in Stoughton are older. Yeah. So there had been plans in place before, years ago, like a pecking order and how they would build new schools, but they're already behind schedule on that. What's your philosophy on how to deal with aging infrastructure in the school system?
The first thing you have to do is pretty much what they had in the past. You have to form a capital improvement plan. You have to look at the schools, see where the need is, and try to figure out which schools are deteriorating the most at the fastest rate, and either renovate them, not right now, but over time, to keep them from deteriorating so quickly, or set up some kind of plan or phase like they have in the past of what targets they're aiming for to do those. But it's a hard task to achieve because the school has a majority of the buildings, but they don't have the only buildings. So it can't be a school improvement plan has to be a town improvement plan where all the buildings are put into that plan. It's unrealistic to think you can come to taxpayers and say, yeah, we need this, and this at $300 each, 10 schools, there's another, off the top of my head, 10 times 300 is $3,000 a year. You can't ask taxpayers for $3,000 a year over the next 20 years. Plus the increased costs of labor, contract negotiations, and everything else. So I'm kind of getting off topic, but anyway, I think you need a whole town-wide improvement plan and look at what is needed immediately, what is needed in the short term, and what is needed in the long term.
I mean, do you feel there need to be more meetings between the Board of Selectmen and the school committee and anybody else who would play a factor role in this? Just more communication between the two boards. It seems like it's always a big to-do when the two boards can finally get together. And there's always much talk about more communication, doesn't necessarily happen though.
Yeah, I think you need it's not so much the two boards, you need a committee for the capital improvement. So you need a capital improvement committee to go through all the buildings and decide which ones are the priority. The school committee and the Board of Selectmen obviously have to work together to find out, to get the funding to do the school side. We don't have anything to do with the funding for the Board of Selectmen, but we'd have to deal with them and work with them to get the funding for the projects. But I don't think it'll be too much of an issue if you adhere to the list that you've determined to be necessary. Just judging by the meeting that they had last week, 2 weeks ago, I mean, they seemed like there was they were happy with the school committee budget. They seemed like they were very receptive to each other. They accepted the 3 articles the school had. So it seems like they have a decent working relationship. It might be beneficial to meet more often if they need to, but I don't think the need is there until you have a full capital improvement design.
I mean, with there being 5 buildings, is the right model to replace every single one or renovate every single one, or should Stoughton be looking at a model of going away from that neighborhood school and going more towards the town-wide, K through 2 type of program, 3 through 5, like some other towns do?
If you go to the K through 2, 3 to 5, like some other towns, you're still going to have the same amount of children. So you're still going to either have to use those schools or you're going to have to build larger schools. So do I think they all have to be rebuilt? No. I mean, a lot of them seem like they're in really good shape. If you keep up on maintenance or anything, like your house, you have houses that are 200 years old. People live in them. You can renovate things, you can remodel them. It's just a matter of keeping up with them as you're going along. One of the things that gets overlooked a lot in municipalities is maintenance. Nobody wants to put money into something that's working. Nobody wants to maintain something that's working. It's just because you have to cut costs wherever you can, and that just so happens to be one. So I don't think it makes sense to tear down all the schools and rebuild new schools. Do you have to keep up with the maintenance? Yes. Do you need to renovate them sometimes? Yes. In regards to the K to 2, 3 to 5, now you're looking at increased busing fees where you're going to have to pay for them because children are going to be more than 2 miles from a school. You don't have an issue. You don't have an option of having a bus fee, or you have to provide the busing, which is going to drive up the cost.
Sure, and all of this plays into a fact with the budget, which, all of these building projects are just additional costs. There's the budget that you have to do every single year, and that's the meat and potato, so to speak. That's that funds the kids learning in school. So what can you do budget-wise? What can you bring to the table from a budget perspective to kind of help the schools get what they need, but also stay within their means, because there are going to be all of these additional projects?
That's the ongoing issue with any department, anywhere, schools. I mean, you only have the funds that come in from the town. You live in the town, so you can't try to take all the money. So this is where it goes back to working with the Board of Selectmen. You have to try to get what you need in hard economic times. You have to deal with level services. It's never a good thing to decline your services. Back in '08 when things went belly up, obviously things had to be done. Schools, I believe, are back to pretty much the same levels as they were in '08. And they seem to do a good job with the budget this year, keeping it at just the 2.5%, which is the amount that you can charge residents by law in the Prop 2.5. So it's not an easy solution. There's no easy solution. You can keep asking for whatever you're asking for, but you take it from Peter to pay for Paul. So it's a balancing game. It's a compromise. You have to work with the teachers, all employees, because they're looking for their contracts for raises. You're looking for money for the schools to put in programs that you want, but the town's looking for money for police, fire, public safety, libraries, and buildings, which a lot of these buildings, as you know, the libraries slated to get done,
right.
Looking for the public safety of the schools. So there's a lot of large ticket items that people are going to be asked to pay for.
Well, what would some priorities be for you, budget-wise? Or just, to see going forward, you're elected over your, 3-year term, some priorities you'd like to see the school tackle?
I don't have one specific thing I could say. Like I stated, I see the schools making good progress. I think they're moving the right way. They switched to the 8-period cycle, so kids have more electives.
Yeah, up in the high school.
In the high school. Yep. I'm very happy with my child's education that she's getting in her school. So I don't have any complaints the way things are going, and I don't think the school committee has any direct way of changing the learning of it. You can only provide them with the financial side of what is asked for, and you have to look at it objectively and see what can be provided. I mean, sports are big things to keep kids interested in school, activities, stuff like that. But as for the education part of it, I think it's progressing very well. And I would just like to make sure that kids are getting what they need to be successful after they leave school. Not necessarily just college, but any secondary education, or even if they want to go into a trade. So I guess guidance would be a big thing. Not necessarily saying we need more guidance, but look at make sure the children have somebody they can talk to and understand how to get where they want to be when they leave school.
And so potentially guidance counselors have to see hundreds of children. Maybe that could be an area fitting in more staff there or something like that.
It's tough because it's tough. I'm not saying they're not doing a good job. I'm not saying they're doing a bad job. It's a tough area because there's a lot of kids and it's hard to give the kids the time they need. But I think that's a good place to focus to make sure the kids are exceeding when they get out of school. And
always a hot button issue is the testing. And now Stoughton scores there. They have improved over time, but they're still not in the top, echelon of schools in the area. And there are competing viewpoints as to the importance of, SAT scores and MCAS scores and PARC. What's your philosophy on standardized testing?
I think there's too much effort towards it. I understand where it's coming from, the reasoning, and they want to make sure all children are at a certain level to succeed. I think children need to just learn the basics, learn the essentials, learn what they need to excel. I don't think a test is going to tell you how good a kid's doing, because some kids don't do excellent on tests, some kids do great on tests. If a kid isn't looking to go to Harvard to become a doctor or a lawyer, and he wants to become an electrician or a plumber, not that the test isn't needed, but I don't think it shows a great reflection of how much that child is learning to need where he needs to identify how well he's doing to be where he wants to be. So I think the testing's good. I think from my understanding, Stoughton isn't focusing all its attention on getting kids to just do great on a test. They seem like they focus on helping kids to achieve their goals.
Now, in terms of graduation requirements, the high school had recently added a financial literacy course in which you have to take to graduate, high school. And of course, you have your sciences and math and English and foreign language. And what if what do you think additionally would you like to see a high school student have to take a course in X in order to graduate? Just something that you feel that is necessary to go out into the, quote, real world.
I don't know if it's, I can't think of it off the top of my head, but I don't know if it's a core class, but some kind of technology class, because just the way the world's going. Nowadays, you can't really get by without knowing how to use electronics, knowing how to, which majority of the kids do, but I think it would be good to show them to make sure that they do know what they're doing to, I mean, you can't apply for a job at a lot of places now by writing on a piece of paper. It's go online, and most kids, I shouldn't say every, but most kids do have computers at home, and they're all on the computers. They're in computers in school and stuff like that, but make sure they're proficient with technology. I think languages are second language is very good, which I know they take the courses. I want to say they have to take four years of the language. So, but yeah, I would say make sure there's some kind of technology, and I'm glad they put the financial course in, because it's very important for children to know how to deal with money.
Now, if elected, you'd be one of just 5 members,
yeah.
And having to work well with others and kind of get along with the dynamic of not just the board, but also, dealing with the administration. Where do you feel that, what do you feel you can kind of bring to the table in terms of being able to coincide and be productive with the other members of the board and the superintendent and her staff?
I feel I'm very open and receptive to ideas, suggestions. Just in my job alone, you have a ton of different personalities working together to accomplish one goal. I'm a lieutenant. I'm usually in charge of the scene, but I'm still answering to my captain and deputy and everybody else. So just in my everyday functions at job, I'm dealing with a lot of the scenarios where you have to be able to take orders when it's necessary, but you have to be able to give orders and compromise to get one goal done. So just through my experience, I feel like I can bring that to the table.
Now, are you willing, though, if necessary, to be a lone vote on an issue that if you felt so strongly about, the rest of the board felt differently, that this was something that was important to me, you would kind of stick up for what you felt in that particular issue?
I feel it's very important to stand up for how you feel, because you can't have 5 people that just say yes to everything. Or you have to have 5 opinions working towards one goal. Not necessarily each specific goal, but the greater goal. So if you don't think this is the way to get there, or he doesn't or she doesn't think this is the way, that you need to speak up and voice your opinion on it. You don't always have to agree with each other, but you have to get along with each other. You have to be able to make compromises. You have to be able to deal with other people to achieve the common good.
Now, this isn't an issue this election cycle, but over the course of a 3-year term, it could be just contract negotiations. Would that be something that, given your role as, I'm assuming you're a member of a union,
yes,
with the Brockton Fire Department, that you might be interested or bring a skill set to a negotiation?
I've never been involved with the actual negotiations. Mm-hmm. I'm familiar with how the process works, and I can see both sides of it, being a union employee looking for the raise, but I can look at it from the management standpoint as well, whereas your funds are limited. So I understand nobody's going to walk away with 100% of being happy on what they got, but that is one of the places where you really have to compromise.
And these have gotten contentious, though. Do you feel that is there a different way to go about it, that it doesn't have to be as contentious?
I think you have to go in with an open mind. You can't walk in and say you're getting nothing, and just sit there and look at them and say, yeah, your requests mean nothing to me. I'm not saying that's what happened. I don't know what happened. I wasn't in any room for any of the conversations. But you have to go in with an open mind and be willing to work with them. If they're looking for money and you say, hey, maybe an extra day off in compensation of that, or you give us something back on this end and we can help you with that, well, that's one way of working it. You can't just go in and say, we have no money, we're giving you nothing, and that's just the way it is. Or the union side can't go in and say, yeah, we want a 10% raise and we're not coming down from that. So you have to be willing to listen, talk, and figure out where the middle point is.
And as the half hour winds down, I'd like to just kind of do some rapid fire questions. So you're fairly new to Stoughton. What's your impression of the town?
Coming from Brockton, it is night and day. It's very family oriented. It's my wife's Portuguese, so that we'll get together for a lot. We'll go to a lot of the feasts and stuff like that. It's nice seeing that people get together for community events. So I'm happy with the town so far.
Yeah, what's your favorite place to eat in town?
My favorite place to eat would probably be Town Spa or Chateau.
Do you have a favorite at either place?
Is one of them my favorite?
No, do you have a favorite at either place, like a favorite go-to meal?
Chicken palm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And music, what's on your iPod, MP3 player, whatever?
Top 40.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's all the newer music.
Sure. I think we definitely we can agree on that.
Yeah.
That's same with my iPod. What's your strengths?
My strengths. I hate talking about myself. I'd say the ability to listen, compromise, problem solve. That's about it, I guess.
And on the other side, what would be what's a weakness or a vice or just something about yourself? Yeah, a weakness about yourself.
I guess I would say I'm not a big public speaker. I'm not a big public speaker. So I don't. I like talking to people. I like having conversations with people, but I'm not a big public speaker.
And so, if you had a day off or you're off duty, what's the favorite thing to do with your kids?
Take them anywhere that they enjoy. I'll take them to parks, museum, children's museum, stuff like that. Just let them burn off some energy and have some fun.
What about personal? What's your if just you had alone time? What's your favorite television show to watch or activity to
playing ice hockey?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my
What
favorite.
position do you play?
Defense.
Defense.
Yeah.
And how play in high school or?
I've played since I was about 10. So I played in high school and I played just intramural in college. I still play now. So.
And just what's the one thing you'd like a voter to take away after meeting you?
The one thing I like to take away is to realize that I'm looking out for the better of the school system and to think of me when they decide to vote in April.
All right. Well, Joe, I want to thank you for joining me today on this edition of Stoughton Spotlight, Conversations with the Candidates. Please be sure to tune in to all of our conversations with the candidates running for Selectman and School Committee. I'm Jeffrey Pickett. Thank you for tuning in, and don't forget to vote in this year's Stoughton Town election. That it's Tuesday, April 5th, 2016. Thank you for tuning in.